I didn't quit, I just stopped. And in less than 48 hours, the entire company began to fall apart. No one could explain the system failures, the furious clients, the deadlines collapsing, until they realized something terrifying. The average employee they'd overlooked was the only thing holding everything together. That morning, when my boss looked me in the eye and said, "You're not ready for a promotion," I smiled. What she didn't know was that it would be the last time I saved them. The conference room smelled faintly of coffee and polished wood, the kind of space designed to make decisions feel important, even when they weren't. I sat across from Megan Collins, hands folded neatly in my lap, watching her flip through my promotion portfolio like it was just another routine document. 4 years. 4 years of late nights, emergency fixes, impossible deadlines, and systems I had built from scratch, summarized into 20 pages she barely skimmed. "I appreciate your initiative, Rachel," Megan said, not looking up. "You've been consistent." Consistent. The word landed heavier than I expected. "I led the Northbridge Recovery Project," I replied carefully. "We retained a multi-million-dollar client. I also rebuilt the operations workflow that reduced downtime by 35%. She finally looked at me, offering a polite, almost rehearsed smile. "And that's great, it really is. But senior roles require visibility, leadership presence, strategic influence. I just don't think you're there yet." Not there yet. I nodded slowly, forcing a smile that felt practiced, automatic. "I understand. Thank you for the feedback. Because that's what people like me did. We understood. We adjusted. We kept going." "Let's revisit this in a year," she added, already glancing at her laptop. "In the meantime, I'll need you to prioritize the Westlake rollout. There are some issues the team can't seem to resolve." Of course there were. There always were. "I'll take care of it," I said, standing up. As I walked out, I passed the glass offices lining the hallway. One of them, corner unit, city view, was meant for the new operations manager. For a brief second, I let myself imagine my name on that door. Then I kept walking. By the time I reached my desk, my phone buzzed. "Jake. How'd it go?" I stared at the screen for a moment before typing back. "Me. Same story. Not ready." 3 dots appeared instantly. "Jake. That's insane. You literally run this place." I almost smiled. He wasn't wrong, but saying it out loud didn't change anything. Another notification popped up, this time from Lily. "Lily, are you coming tonight? It starts at 7. Please don't be late this time." My chest tightened. Her violin recital. I checked the clock. 5:42 p.m. If I left now, I could still make it. Barely. Then my inbox refreshed. Subject: urgent. Westlake system failure. I closed my eyes. Just one fix, I told myself. 1 hour, maybe 2. I typed quickly. "Me. I'll try my best. So proud of you." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. No reply. By 9:18 p.m., the office was nearly empty. The city lights outside flickered against the glass, reflecting a version of me I barely recognized. Tired, wired, and still typing. "Still here?" I looked up. Jake leaned against the doorway, backpack slung over one shoulder. "You missed it, didn't you?" he asked quietly. I didn't answer. He sighed, stepping inside. "Rachel, you need to see what's happening. They're not promoting you because you're too valuable where you are. You fix everything before anyone notices it's broken." I let out a small, humorless laugh. "So I'm being punished for doing my job well?" "You're being hidden," he said. "There's a difference." His words lingered long after he left. When I finally got home, Lily was already asleep. Her violin case rested by the couch, still open. Sheet music scattered across the table. I picked up one page, fingers brushing over the notes. A quiet kind of guilt settled in my chest. In the reflection of the dark window, I saw it clearly for the first time. Not exhaustion, not frustration. Something colder. Something sharper. Maybe Jake was right. Maybe the problem wasn't that I wasn't ready. Maybe the problem was that I had made it too easy for them to forget how much they needed me. And for the first time in years, I wondered what would happen if I stopped. I didn't decide to change overnight. That would have been easier, clean, dramatic, final. Instead, the realization crept in slowly the next morning as I sat at my desk at 7:15 a.m., the office still half asleep. The hum of servers in the background felt oddly louder than usual, like a reminder that everything here depended on invisible systems I had built. I opened the operations dashboard. Every workflow, every escalation path, every automated alert, it all traced back to me in some way. 4 years ago, this place had been chaos. I still remembered my first week. No documentation, no clear processes, just panicked emails and missed deadlines. The previous operations lead had left abruptly, taking everything with him. That's when I started building, piece by piece. Late nights turned into structured workflows. Scattered spreadsheets became integrated systems. I created manuals, hundreds of pages long, color-coded, indexed, cross-referenced. No one asked me to, they just expected things to work. Morning, early as always. I looked up to see Ethan Park, one of the junior analysts. Mid-20s, slightly disheveled, always carrying a laptop like it was glued to his hand. Ethan was smart but easily overwhelmed. He relied heavily on clear instructions. Morning, I replied. He hesitated. Hey, the supplier sync failed again last night. Do you want me to? I've already patched it, I said without thinking. Of course I had. His shoulders visibly relaxed. Right, yeah, of course you did. That was the pattern. They didn't solve problems, they brought them to me. By noon, I was deep in the Northbridge Inc. account. They had been one of our biggest clients, and one of our closest calls. 2 years ago, they were ready to walk. Their systems were failing, timelines slipping. I had stepped in personally. Late-night calls, emergency fixes, learning their entire infrastructure from scratch. Eventually, they stopped asking for the company. They asked for me. Rachel, quick thing. I turned to see Megan Collins approaching. Perfect posture, tailored blazer, every detail controlled. She had that polished confidence executives loved, sharp, articulate, always composed. I'm presenting the quarterly results this afternoon, she said. I'll need a summary of the Northbridge recovery, high level, strategic framing. I stared at her for a moment. You mean the one I led? She smiled. Of course, just send me the key points. Key points. Translation. She would present it as hers, like always. That night, I was back at my desk. 11:47 p.m. The office was empty except for one other person. Still fighting fires? I turned. Jake walked in, hoodie half-zipped, holding 2 cups of coffee. His dark hair was messy, eyes tired but sharp. Jake was the kind of person who saw systems the way I did, only he worked in IT, buried behind infrastructure no one else understood. Always, I said. He handed me a cup and pulled up a chair. All right, show me. We worked in silence for a while, debugging a system lag that had been quietly building for weeks. You know what's crazy? Jake muttered. If you disappeared tomorrow, this place wouldn't last a week. I didn't respond, because for the first time, I wasn't sure I wanted to prove him wrong. The next morning, I didn't wake up early. No 6 a.m. alarms, no checking emails before my feet touched the ground. Instead, I opened my eyes to sunlight spilling through the curtains and the faint sound of Lily humming in the kitchen. For a moment, I didn't move. It felt unfamiliar. Rachel? Lily called. Are you alive in there, or did corporate finally kill you? I let out a quiet laugh and got up. She stood by the stove wearing an oversized sweater, her hair loosely tied back. At 19, Lily had a soft, artistic presence, gentle, observant, the kind of person who noticed emotions before words. Losing our parents young had made her more mature than most her age, but she still held on to small joys like music and cooking. I was thinking, I said, leaning against the counter, maybe I stay home a little longer today. She raised an eyebrow. Who are you and what have you done with my sister? I arrived at the office at exactly 9 a.m. Not earlier, not later, exactly on time. The difference was subtle, but to me, it felt massive. I sat down, opened my laptop, and waited. Emails flooded in within minutes. Subject lines marked urgent, priority, ASAP. I scanned them. Then I did something I had never done before. I ignored the ones that weren't directly assigned to me. Rachel, quick question. I looked up. Diana Brooks from procurement stood beside my desk. She was in her early 30s, tall and sharp-featured, always dressed in clean, structured outfits. Efficient, but known for pushing work onto others when things got complicated. The vendor contract issue? She said. Can you take a look? You usually handle these. I offered a polite smile. That falls under procurement. You've got this. Her expression flickered, surprise, maybe even irritation. Right, okay. She walked away slower than she came. By noon, the office felt different. Not chaotic, not yet. Just slightly off balance. Like something small had shifted and no one could quite explain why. At 5 p.m., I shut my laptop. No hesitation, no, just one more thing. I stood up, grabbed my bag, and left. Behind me, conversations continued, keyboards clattered, problems lingered. But for once, they weren't mine. That evening, I found myself in a small yoga studio a few blocks from our apartment. The instructor, Emily Carter, greeted me with a warm smile. She was in her late 30s, tall and lean, with calm, steady eyes that seemed to slow everything around her. There was something grounding about her presence, like she had mastered the art of not rushing. First time? She asked gently. I nodded. Then today, we focus on one thing, she said. Letting go. Later that night, Lily and I stood side by side in the kitchen, attempting to cook something that vaguely resembled pasta. You're different, she said suddenly. Good different or bad different? She smiled. Free different. My phone buzzed on the table. I glanced at the screen. Dozens of notifications, missed calls, messages. I turned it face down. Across from me, Lily laughed as sauce splattered slightly onto the counter. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel the urge to fix everything. The next day, Jake showed up at my desk, arms crossed, studying me like a puzzle. You're doing it, aren't you? He said. Doing what? Nothing. I smiled slightly. Not nothing, just my job. He stared at me for a second, then grinned. About time. It didn't happen all at once. At first, it was just small things. An unanswered email, a delayed response, a missed update in the system. Tiny cracks. Easy to ignore until they weren't. By mid-morning, I noticed the shift. People weren't walking with their usual rhythm. Conversations were sharper, more urgent. Screens filled with long email threads marked in red. Did you see this? Ethan rushed over, slightly out of breath, his laptop already open. The logistics sync failed again, and now the client timeline's off. I glanced briefly. That's assigned to operations support. He blinked. But you usually... I'm focusing on my assigned tasks, I said calmly. He stood there for a second longer, then nodded, uncertain, before walking away. By noon, the cracks had spread. The office noise had changed. Not louder, just more frantic. I overheard raised voices near the conference room. That wasn't escalated. Because no one flagged it. Well, who's responsible for tracking this? I kept typing. Not my responsibility. Not anymore. At 2:15 p.m., Megan appeared beside my desk. Her usual composed posture was slightly off, shoulders tighter, voice sharper. Rachel, I've been trying to reach you, she said. I was in focus mode, I replied evenly. Her jaw clenched. The Northbridge account is experiencing delays. They're asking for immediate clarification. I nodded. All documentation is in the shared drive, under client operations. There are hundreds of files, she snapped. Can you just handle it? I met her gaze. I have a compliance report due today. Would you like me to deprioritize that? She hesitated. For the first time, she didn't have an immediate answer. That evening, my phone started ringing before I even left the building. Megan. Again. And again. And again. I let it ring. By the time I got home, the sun was setting, casting warm light across the apartment. Lily sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by sheet music, her violin resting nearby. You're early, she said, looking up. 5:10, I replied. She smiled. I like this version of you. I raised an eyebrow. Oh? You're here, she said simply. Not physically here, actually here. Her words settled quietly in the room. My phone buzzed against the table. I didn't pick it up. Instead, I sat down beside her. Play something? I asked. She hesitated, then lifted the violin. The first note filled the room, soft, steady, alive. For a moment, everything else disappeared. No emails, no deadlines, no chaos. Until the music stopped. I glanced at my phone. 27 missed calls, 12 voicemails, countless messages. One subject line stood out. Urgent, North Bridge escalation. I exhaled slowly and turned the screen off. The next morning, the dominoes had fully fallen. The office felt like a different place. People moved faster. Voices overlapped. No one looked entirely sure of what they were doing. Near the entrance, I spotted Marcus Reed, the client relations manager. Early 40s, tall, broad-shouldered, usually confident, but now visibly strained, tie loosened, eyes tired. They're threatening to pull, he muttered into his phone. No, I don't have an answer yet. He ended the call and ran a hand through his hair. For the first time since I'd known him, he looked unsure. I walked to my desk, sat down, and opened my laptop. Everything was exactly where I left it. Except now, no one knew how to keep it running. By the third day, the chaos wasn't subtle anymore. It was loud, visible, unavoidable. I had barely sat down when Jake dropped into the chair beside me, looking like he hadn't slept in days. His hoodie was wrinkled, eyes bloodshot, fingers tapping restlessly against his laptop. They pulled me into operations, he said without greeting. Me, IT, fixing workflow issues I've never even seen before. I glanced at his screen, layers of system logs, broken integrations, half-documented processes. There's no clear documentation, he continued, frustration creeping into his voice. Or at least, nothing anyone can actually follow. I didn't say anything, because I knew exactly where the documentation was, and how detailed it was. They just never bothered to learn it. At 10:03 a.m., a company-wide message popped up. Emergency meeting, all key personnel required. I stood, smoothing out my blazer, and walked toward the main conference room. Inside, the atmosphere was tense. At the head of the table stood Daniel Brooks, the new CEO. He was younger than I expected, late 30s, tall, with a composed but intense presence. His dark hair was neatly styled, his posture straight, and his sharp eyes scanned the room like he was already calculating outcomes before anyone spoke. There was something different about him, less performative than Megan, more observant. Beside him, Megan looked nothing like her usual self. Her posture was rigid, but her hands betrayed her, clutching a pen too tightly, tapping it against the table. Her voice, when she spoke, carried a faint edge of panic. We are currently experiencing operational disruptions, she began, but we're working to stabilize. Working how? Daniel interrupted calmly. Silence, then murmurs, then nothing. Marcus spoke up next, voice strained. Northbridge is threatening to terminate the contract. They've already escalated to executive level. Daniel's gaze shifted slowly across the room. Who owns this account operationally? No one answered, not immediately. Then, almost reluctantly, Megan said, Rachel has been closely involved. Every head turned toward me. I met Daniel's gaze, calm, steady. Can you fix this? He asked. Not will you, can you? I paused. I can provide guidance, I said carefully. The processes are documented. Implementation requires coordination across departments. A subtle shift in the room. Expectation, unmet. After the meeting, as people scattered, my phone buzzed. An email. Subject, opportunity, Senior Operations Lead, San Francisco. I opened it. The offer was direct. Competitive salary, leadership role, immediate impact. They had outlined my exact strengths, as if they actually understood what I did. For a moment, everything else faded. Thinking of leaving? I looked up. Jake stood nearby, arms crossed. Just reading options, I replied. He nodded slowly. If you go, I might follow. I raised an eyebrow. Really? He shrugged. I'd rather work somewhere that knows who's actually keeping things running. Across the office, Megan's voice rose again, sharp, strained, almost breaking as she tried to regain control in another meeting. For the first time, everyone could see it. The system wasn't breaking. It had always been fragile. They just never noticed. Because I never let it fail. The offer came faster than I expected. At 8:12 a.m., an email from Daniel Brooks appeared in my inbox. Subject: Let's talk, today. Short, direct. Different from everything else happening in the company. His office was on the top floor, glass walls, minimal design, the kind of space that felt intentional rather than decorative. Daniel stood by the window when I walked in. Rachel, he said, turning slightly. Thanks for coming. Up close, he seemed even more composed than in meetings. Not cold, just precise. The kind of person who measured words before speaking them. I'll get straight to it, he continued. We underestimated your role here. I said nothing. He gestured toward the chair. I sat. I've reviewed your work, he went on. Not the summaries, the actual systems, processes, client interactions. A pause. You're operating at a level far beyond your current position. There it was. Recognition. Late, but real. I want to offer you a new role, Daniel said. Senior Operations Director, reporting directly to me. I held his gaze. Double your current salary, full authority over operational systems. For a moment, the room felt very still. This was everything I should have wanted, everything I had worked for. And Megan? I asked. A slight pause. She will remain in her role for now, but operations will no longer fall under her direct control. That told me everything I needed to know. I'll need time, I said finally. Of course, Daniel nodded. But not too long. The company needs stability. That evening, I sat across from Lily at our small kitchen table. She stirred her tea slowly, watching me with quiet focus. So, she said, what are your options? Stay, I replied, or leave for San Francisco. She tilted her head slightly. Which one makes you feel respected? The question caught me off guard. Not safer, not richer, respected. I don't know, I admitted. She smiled gently. Then maybe that's your answer. Later that night, I stepped out onto the balcony. The city stretched out in front of me, familiar, predictable, safe. My phone buzzed. Jake. Tell me you're not actually considering staying, he said the moment I answered. I haven't decided. He exhaled. Rachel, if you leave, I'm probably right behind you. I leaned against the railing. You'd leave your job just like that? It's not about the job, he said. It's about working somewhere that sees what matters. After the call, I stood there for a long time. Two paths. Stay and fix a system that had failed me, or leave and start over somewhere new. I imagined San Francisco. New office, new people, no history, no expectations, no being invisible. But also, no foundation, no control over what I had already built. For years, I had made myself indispensable. Now, for the first time, I had to decide what that was actually worth. I didn't sleep much that night. Not because I didn't know the answer, but because I finally did. By 7:40 a.m., I was already standing outside Daniel's office. His assistant, Clara Jennings, looked up as I approached. She was in her early 30s with sharp cheekbones and neatly tied blonde hair, dressed in a crisp navy suit. Efficient, observant, the kind of person who missed nothing. He's expecting you, she said with a small nod. Of course he was. Daniel was seated behind his desk when I walked in. Decision made? He asked. Yes, I said, taking the seat across from him. I'll stay. A brief pause. Then I continued. But under conditions. His expression didn't change, but his attention sharpened. I want full authority to build my own operations team, I said. Hiring decisions, structure, workflow design, everything. He nodded slowly. Reasonable, go on. I also want direct reporting to you, no layered approvals that dilute execution. Another nod. And Megan stays. That got a reaction. Not dramatic, just a slight narrowing of his eyes. After everything? He asked. Yes. There was a moment of silence. I'm not interested in revenge, I said calmly. The problem isn't one person, it's the system. Replacing her won't fix that. Daniel leaned back slightly, studying me. That's a very strategic perspective. I've had years to observe, I replied. Done, he said finally. You'll have full authority. We'll formalize everything today. Just like that. No negotiation, no resistance. Because now, they knew my value. When I stepped out, Megan was waiting. For a second, I barely recognized her. She looked tired. Not just physically, but something deeper. The confidence she usually carried like armor was thinner now. Rachel, she said quietly. Do you have a moment? I nodded. We stepped into a smaller meeting room. For a few seconds, she didn't speak, then, I owe you an apology. The words felt almost unfamiliar coming from her. I relied on you too much, she continued, and I didn't give you the credit you deserved. I watched her carefully. This wasn't the polished Megan from executive meetings. This was real. Thank you, I said simply. She exhaled, tension easing slightly. I hope we can reset things, she added. So do I replied, but this time, on different terms. By afternoon, I found Jake in the server room, surrounded by cables and screens. You look like you've seen a ghost, he said. I'm staying, I replied. He blinked. Seriously? On one condition, I added. You're joining my team. He stared at me for a second, then broke into a grin. About time someone promoted me properly. That evening, Lily was practically glowing when I told her. You did what? She said, eyes wide. I set conditions, I smiled. She laughed. That's my sister. There was pride in her voice, not just happiness, pride. For the first time in years, I hadn't just accepted what was given. I had defined it. 6 months later, the office felt like a different world. Not quieter, just clearer. There was structure now, visible, intentional, systems that didn't rely on silent fixes or last-minute rescues, processes people actually understood, processes they owned. I stood at the front of the operations floor, watching my team move with a rhythm that didn't exist before. Jake was at the center of it, leaning over a desk, explaining something to Sophie Nguyen, our newest systems analyst. Sophie was in her late 20s, petite with sharp, focused eyes behind thin-rimmed glasses. She had a calm intensity about her, quick to learn but even quicker to question inefficiencies. She reminded me of myself, just earlier in the journey. You don't fix it alone, Jake was saying. You document it, escalate properly, and let the system handle the rest. I smiled slightly. That sentence alone meant everything had changed. Rachel. I turned to see Daniel approaching. You've seen the latest reports? He asked. I have. Operational delays, down 42%. Client satisfaction, highest in 2 years. Overtime hours, significantly reduced. You've done more in 6 months than we've done in 3 years, he said. I shook my head. The team did. And this time, that wasn't just humility, it was true. Later that afternoon, I joined a call with Northbridge Inc. Their director, Thomas Keller, appeared on screen. Mid-50s, silver hair, composed demeanor, the kind of executive who valued results over promises. We've reviewed the new operational model, he said. Impressive work. Thank you, I replied. We'd like to expand the contract, he continued. 2 additional service lines, but we want your team leading the implementation. I felt a quiet sense of satisfaction. Not relief, not validation, something steadier, earned. That evening, I left the office at 5:03 p.m., not because I had to, because I could. At home, Lily was sitting by the window, violin resting on her shoulder as she practiced. She stopped when I walked in. On time again, she said with a grin. Consistently, I replied. She studied me for a moment, You're happy. I thought about it. I'm balanced, I said. A few hours later, I sat at the kitchen table reviewing a document. Talent Development Initiative, Draft V3. Across from me, Jake scrolled through his laptop. This is a lot, he said. Training programs, mentorship tracks, internal promotions. It's necessary, I replied. There are people here who've been overlooked for years. Like you were. I met his gaze. Exactly. My phone buzzed. A message from Daniel. Board approved your promotion. Director of Operations. Effective next month. I stared at the screen for a second, then set it down. Not because it didn't matter, but because it wasn't the only thing that did anymore. Across the room, Lily started playing again. The notes filled the space, steady, confident, alive, and for the first time in a long time, everything felt exactly where it was supposed to be. Have you ever felt invisible at work, even when everything depended on you? If you were Rachel, would you stay and change the system, or walk away? Comment your answer below. I'd love to hear your story. And don't forget to subscribe. The next story will be even more intense.